Here we are. Good morning everyone and welcome to Mido 2026. Before we begin, we want to tell you about this beautiful stage. We are at the vision stage, born from the awareness that Mido is not only a showcase for commercial and industrial hardware excellence, but also a laboratory of ideas, confrontation and responsibility. As far as the industry's present and future are concerned, ANFAO and Mido President Lorraine Berton and the presidential team are investing in content beyond product, focusing on people, values and social change. The economic and cultural transformations taking place in our time. Appointments will highlight leadership, geopolitics, sustainability, visual health, diverse themes united by shared responsibility.
Sostenibilità, salute visiva, insomma sono tutti temi molto diversi fra di loro ma accomunati dalla stessa idea di responsabilità condivisa.
We start with a concrete experience. Throughout 2025, ANFAO accompanied its member companies and those involved in a structured work, in collaboration with many, focused on leadership values. A particular consistency between vision and action. Please join me in applauding the Vice President of ANFAO, who will speak to us about the work done. Sabrina Paolo. Good morning, Sabrina. Welcome, Simone, please. Welcome to everyone. The Director. In 2024, our journey began, reflecting on language and how we discuss inclusion in companies and with people.
Che ci ha portati a riflettere sul linguaggio, su come noi parliamo di inclusione nelle nostre aziende con le persone.
About what words we choose, because the word is important to describe what we want to be as people, as a company and as an industry. Soon we realized words alone are not enough, they must become behaviors, transform.
Non bastano se non diventano comportamenti, se non si trasformano.
If they do not become concrete actions, they risk remaining a slogan. So in 2025, we decided to bring language to what words are. In deeds. Our new training course on inclusive behavior is free and open to all member companies.
Rivolto a tutte le aziende associate, che parla di comportamenti inclusivi. Un viaggio gratuito, aperto a tutti.
A journey starting with Marco 800, involving approximately 40 people from our member companies in Belluno and Milan. It was a heterogeneous group, curious and occasionally critical. This diversity allowed us to reach three fundamental conclusions. There is a deep need for authenticity. Today's audiences want consistency, concrete results, and impactful messages relevant to their daily lives. The second is the struggle to turn words into deeds. It is easy to say, I use inclusive language and work hard to implement it within the company. It is difficult because we do not always have everyone's will, the right tools or shared company habits. Third is leadership, authentic leadership, not role-dependent, but leading by example. We as first lines have a responsibility to behave authentically, as people, because we are constantly observed. Not only in meetings or institutional gatherings, This awareness led to tools, checklists, feedback, questionnaires.
Sono feedback, sono questionari.
We've worked on creating psychological safety, enabling teams to be actors, not spectators, and dealing with resistance.
Come rendere i team non spettatori, ma attori in primo piano, su come affrontare le resistenze che ci
That may be within the working environment by involving them.
lavorativo, coinvolgendoli.
True inclusion builds bridges between generations, including mentorship paths and contractual arrangements.
Ma crea dei ponti tra generazioni, anche con percorsi di mentorship e anche con percorsi che in alcuni casi chiamiamo di staffetta.
We call this generational relay, where departing employees become mentors to remaining staff.
Appunto diventa maestro nei confronti di chi resta. E proprio
Our final realization is that structural change requires focus on young people.
è forse la più importante, ovvero che se vogliamo che tutto questo diventi strutturale, dobbiamo puntare sui giovani. Perché
Because they will take this industry forward, they demand a different environment.
che chiedono un ambiente diverso.
New generations are very different from us.
Generazioni sono molto diverse da noi. La nostra
Ours is the last generation to experience work as sacrifice, commitment, and purpose. Sometimes,
come scopo alcune volte della vita.
they demand well-being and diversity.
L'ambiente sia un ambiente di benessere, che ci sia diversità, hanno un
They have a keen eye for sustainability and innately transform these values into real behavior.
e loro hanno questo potere, avendolo innato, di trasformare questi valori in comportamenti reali.
Today we discuss progress in 2024 and 2025, and our path for 2026.
Nel 2025, ma anche di quello che avverrà domani, di quello che è il nostro percorso 2026. Come
24 focused on language, 25 on behavior, and the 26th will cover fostering these behaviors in young people for the future.
come portare questi comportamenti nel futuro attraverso i giovani. Come quindi
How to retain talent within our companies and attract young people. How do we transform our leadership models?
aziende e di attrarre i giovani talenti, come trasformare i nostri modelli di leadership.
This is not just a pathway but a path we will pursue over time.
Solamente un percorso, ma un cammino che noi porteremo avanti nel tempo.
Following me, Daniele Cassioli and Pasquale Gravina will discuss inclusive leadership. Tomorrow, Ferdinando De Giorgi will lead an in-depth session on young people.
Un approfondimento dedicato ai giovani con Ferdinando De Giorgi.
World Talk for us is not a title, but a commitment. To be concrete, make courageous choices, even against the trend, and to put
Di essere concreti, di fare scelte anche coraggiose, alle volte anche controtendenza, e di mettere le persone
people at the center, our commitment. The Inclusion Project is a way of being, working, and leading to build the future. Thank you.
un modo di stare insieme, di lavorare, di guidare e soprattutto è un modo per noi di costruire il futuro. Grazie.
I leave the stage to Pasquale and Daniele. Thank you, Sabrina, thank you, Simone, and thank you very much. I wish you always good work. This was clearly a tale of transformation, experience, and reflection. So now we really want to get to the heart of our first dialogue. Vice President Sabrina walk the talk is really transforming professional and work experience into a concrete guide for change. Good morning, A2. A2 champions in sport and in life.
Sono molto felice oggi di dare il buongiorno a due campioni nello sport e nella vita, se posso.
Good morning to Daniele Castagnoli, water skier and Italian sports executive, blind since birth and considered the greatest water skiing Paralympian of all time.
Il più grande sciatore nautico paralimpico di tutti i tempi e
Pasquale Gravina, former central volleyball player of the legendary generation of Phenomena, now keynote speaker, coach and training advisor. Good morning and welcome. Perfect. Are you open? Thank you. We'll be listening. Thank you for your welcome and this invitation. We thank Sabrina Paulson for her cooperation. We are EVA, a management training company.
Sabrina Paolon sia per la collaborazione che abbiamo in piedi come azienda di formazione manageriale, cioè TACTMI.
She said important things I share, not only because we collaborate, but because she touched on critical company points. For example, attracting talent and above all,
Delle criticità enormi dentro le aziende, per esempio quella della capacità di attrarre talenti e soprattutto di
of retaining them internally. I'll introduce myself quickly because then the highlight of the day is not me who is now of a certain age, but it is this gentleman next to me, with whom we have been working for a while. And my name is Pasquale Gravina, as I was just introduced.
Io mi chiamo Pasquale Gravina, come mi hanno appena presentato.
Here is a summary of my achievements.
Il mio palmarès.
I'm lucky to have lived through this era of Italian sport, but comparing myself to Daniele Cassioli, he rattles the microphone.
No, ma ogni volta che mi paragono a Daniele Cassioli mi sento. Sì, fa rumore il microfono. Ogni volta
Whenever I compare myself to Daniele, I almost feel inadequate. Because he has won 28 World Championships, I have 22.
ok, io ne ho 22, capito?
You understand that there is a bit of a difference. In fact, I told him to stop as soon as possible, so we stop your record.
Tuo record mi sentirò
I'll always feel small, but we'll coexist better. I represent everyone and never. Here are my colleagues.
rappresento TACTMI, qui ci sono i miei colleghi
Giovanni
Giovanni
Argentin and Alessio, with whom we have built this meeting.
incontro con voi.
We provide management training to improve manager behavior. Today we are joined by Daniele Castagnoli, a long-term collaborator.
E oggi abbiamo la fortuna di avere con noi Daniele Cassioli, con cui lavoriamo da anni.
He is a champion and an exceptional person. Listen to him to understand why.
Eccezionale e lo capirete ascoltandolo. E ogni
Every time we do an event with Daniele, I feel a little better at the end than I did at the start.
come l'ho iniziato. Mi sento
I feel I have fewer problems than I think, because he has more, and deals with them differently, communicating openly. But you will learn this
ma lo imparerete
very quickly, I would say. That's it, Daniele.
così. Daniele, iniziamo
Let's get started right away by showing one of your videos, titled
un tuo video che è intitolato Il
The
video
Visionary, which fits perfectly on this stage, as we discuss visions and inclusion.
parliamo di visioni oltre che di inclusione. Quindi vediamo il video
Daniele's video lasts 40 minutes, yet they don't even react. Are you resting?
riposando voi, va bene?
We'll now play Daniele's video, then ask him questions. Mostly you.
Faremo un po' di domande sia io ma soprattutto voi, quindi
So get your smartphones ready. How can we do that? You're called a blind man, rebel. Because I never accepted societal rules. I've been told this repeatedly. Someone who cannot see cannot do it. That's it. For me, rebel means doing things that were not thought possible. 22 world titles, 25 European titles, and 35 Italian titles won. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniele Grazioli. I cried because of the obstacle. I suffered greatly as soon as an obstacle arose. The idea is to find an alternative route that takes me over the obstacle. If you want to exaggerate, then to suffer because of an obstacle is to throw myself at it. Responsibility and our attention on it. Passion has been fundamental. Passion in sport, not medals.
La passione per me è stata fondamentale e la passione nello sport e non le medaglie.
The medals were then the result of passion. Why? Self-irony? Definitely. For me it rhymes with I love you. I took the time. It's not like I was born saying thank you sir, look at this diversity I really wanted, thank you very much. Transmit a positive mood, a good feeling to a child.
Trasmettere uno stato d'animo positivo, una bella sensazione a un bambino o in generale
For a person in general, it's a bit like the medal that comes out of the notice board.
la medaglia che esce fuori dalla bacheca. Cioè la medaglia tu la vinci.
You win it, they give it to you, and it's yours alone. The moment my path can help someone, those medals come to life. Come on, come on, come on.
Improvvisamente prendono vita.
If there's peace already, as you say, then so be it. I see the light and the dark, and that is all.
È tutto qua.
Daniele Cassioli deserves this applause.
Cassioli, che si merita già questo applauso iniziale, Daniele.
Daniele, thank you meanwhile. Good morning. It seems an oxymoron that someone who can't see. I thank Pasquale and colleagues at DieTypeKit for allowing me to be here with ANFAO. Pasquale, thank you for your words. The enrichment is mutual. Focusing on these issues centers vision, prompting behavioral and values self-questioning, areas often considered secondary. But then we sports people know that. When the team takes the field or the athlete goes into the water, all those things come together. You realize if certain elements are circulating, and it's a pleasure to discuss this together, especially achieving completion of this journey, a path that has activated people. Fascinating, because we're often inclusive about things that affect us, aren't we? If I am blind, I am sensitive to my issues. If a woman, to gender issues. If young. And instead build a collective sensitivity in a context that can be welcoming for everyone is really fascinating. It was also discussed due to your design, yes. Thank you. We call this meeting Walk the Talk to ensure statements from companies and organizations translate into concrete actions, grounding behaviors.
Alle aziende, alle organizzazioni non restino soltanto buone intenzioni, ma trovino le azioni concrete per mettere a terra i comportamenti che prima ben
Has so well described as a path to follow. ANFAO. Ongoing for 2 years, as Sabrina Paola described. We have prepared some pictures for you to view.
farvi vedere insieme a Daniele
Daniele, meanwhile, access via smartphone, the QR code on the right, or the site on the left, entering that code. The top strip will remain on all slides.
sulla destra o andando direttamente sul sito che vedete a sinistra inserendo quel codice, comunque quella striscia in alto ve la lascio su tutte le slide perché
We'll now begin the slides. Questions can be asked now.
la possibilità di fare domande ce l'avete da subito. Quindi
If you hear from Daniele, write any questions for him in the questions section, as we do not request your name or email.
nome né cognome né email è completamente
It is completely anonymous. Write it down. Ask anything. We will read your questions, time permitting.
tempi tutte le vostre curiosità. Come vedete
As you can see, I will leave you up top. Should you leave the platform, you can easily get back in using the site and that code. I wanted to ask Daniele, who has a football team jersey and goes to games at a stadium.
squadra di calcio ed è a uno stadio e lui va a vedere le partite. Ecco, poi qua
Right, when you ask questions, I'll see them via that icon.
vedete in basso
Bottom right, I know a few questions have come in and we'll speed up.
e magari acceleriamo sulle nostre e diamo
Let's give you more space. Daniele, one of the things that strikes me about Daniele is
di Daniele ogni volta che ci confrontiamo.
your realized name is the most important speaker these days. I'm telling you.
Ve lo dico io. Una delle
One thing that struck me is A guy who wins 28 world championships in water skiing. It's always been your dream, right? He says no. If I saw there I wouldn't do water skiing anymore. What would you do? What would you have liked to do if you had the chance to see? That's fascinating. Because, starting from the beginning, even volleyball. So it was the stature that didn't help me. Generally, I have been blind from birth. I've oriented my choices with respect to my condition and, therefore, a principle of reality. For example, my father was a helicopter pilot. For someone who can't see, being a pilot is not the best choice, no? And yet, it's easier than driving. When you have to land, you have to know where to go. In sports, it was the same. All my friends played football, and I dreamed of doing the same. Football for the blind exists, but in Italy it's not widespread and lacks tracks for children with visual disabilities. I dreamt of football, and then this football. In short, I could not do it for these reasons. This was a moment of great suffering, injustice, and frustration. How did you deal with that anger, which everyone experiences? I initially experienced it. I remember not sleeping, crying, and feeling very sad. Then, thanks to my parents, as I was 7 years old. 7 or 8 years old, my parents said, "Daniele, okay, football, but there must be some other sport, right?" Then we talk about now. In 1994, the Paralympic world and the Paralympic athlete lacked the disability culture that exists now. There was significantly less awareness. There was less information. My parents were leaving for a snowy trip when I was born, bringing skis for a son who couldn't see. We will never go there again. Then they discovered that blind people ski. I started with the Verbania group, blind skiers skiing on snow, and the idea of skiing freely, without needing attachment to something or someone, really appealed to me. In 1995, someone told us about a group taking disabled people water skiing in Italy. The term Paralympic did not yet exist, so it comes back to what Sabrina said earlier about words. Because words are form. By dint of saying certain words, good and evil become our new lenses. If we want to consider this context, and the content within it, the world, or from which we analyze what happens to us, we were disabled athletes shortly before that. Athletes with disabilities. If you go on television now and say, look at the handicapped one as he is, good at water skiing, you get shot, right? So that's generally true. They told us desperate people are water skiing in Italy. And there are a few people with disabilities. On Lake Como, a girl in a wheelchair, an amputee boy and a blind guy, we're full. I said I'm going to do this. And there I met water skiing. Thank you. If you consider my condition, it's not as if water skiing is something I do. You do it if born the son of a skier or near a lake, but I've never woken up wanting to water ski. No. It's not a sport typically experienced through television or well-known athletes. That sport was probably him choosing me, but what we gave each other was extraordinary. A transversal message, in my opinion. Differences and stumbles can open new roads, as long as the context is sensitive to them. He is an extraordinary person who makes the abnormal seem normal. 5 questions have come in. I'll proceed faster. We'll read those from the people in front of you. Sabrina Paolo asked, what aspect of diversity have people worked on? What if it's called walk the talk? You rightly spoke about consistency of behavior, but I'd step back. Diversity is often misunderstood. What or to what extent is one different?
Intendibile, no? Che cosa è diverso o fino a che punto si è diversi. Secondo te,
In your opinion, what is diversity? If I had to sum it up in a few words, definitely diversity is many things together is a bit of everything you and Sabrina have already mentioned. Disability is a form of diversity, a visible one. Sabrina rightly touched upon the subject of the new generations. The challenge, even in companies, is to start working with people who function differently from us. I am 40 this year, and from a generation where diversity, disability and visible diversity is often grasped more readily when seen than unseen. I always say sighted people are a bit strange in this regard. It's easier. I can't see when standing and walking to intervene to tell Daniele, look, there's a step, I'll help. And I don't always proactively address lack of diversity. No, diversity is also difficulties. Diversity is, in my opinion, a universal characteristic we all have. There are visible and invisible diversities. Diversity, I have to say in a transparent way, we talk about it often. Diversity is hardship. Coaches initially hid from training a blind athlete like me, rather than seeking me out. And as you can imagine, hiding with me isn't that complicated, is it? When something different or new occurs, the approach is often simply nice. I get curious and do something I've never done before. Sir, how do I do it? That I've never done it? That's a different thing. I stay away from it, don't I? Diversity is effort. Due to human nature. It's a great opportunity to cultivate curiosity and relational competence. Who's in the corporate world? Not only diversity, but also people from abroad with different cultures, people of different roles, and different cultural backgrounds. Dealing with people and being proactive in relationships is a resource we can utilize. This message from nature confirms biodiversity is an added value, not individual species. Species with only the upper range of their distribution preserved, but containing diversity within the species, are the most likely to be conserved. This nuance gives us some insight. It's human nature. Laziness and the comfort zone are overblown terms we all recognize. Often, the first instinct is to resist diversity, or to be prejudiced to diversity, rather than cultivate curiosity. True, we must not only discuss this, but implement concrete behavior. Otherwise, an insurmountable barrier remains. You raised a key issue for companies today, coexistence between different generations. Generational differences have always existed. Today the gap between, for example, the under-30s generation and Generation Z is even more distant. Generation X, or the baby boomers. They have a conception of work, communication, and their work experience completely different. A diversity which, if not addressed, creates difficulties within the company. You've already covered some themes well. With questions now at 14, I'll be brief. If you give me telegraphic answers, let's give them priority. That's another thing I wanted to share with you, that when he told me I jumped out of my chair, talk about luck and bad luck, he said, but all things considered, I'm lucky to be blind, because I have done and understood and experienced things that if I had seen I would never have experienced. That's it, I told you sober. He hadn't been drinking. You tell us in 1 minute why you feel lucky. It was. In fact, I just posted a story on Instagram where I said quite a lot. Whoever sees asks me, but if you saw, what would you do? I enjoyed asking my followers, but now I'm reversing the roles. If you couldn't see, what would you do? If you were blind like me, what would you do? So, I have to tell you, My family and those coaches, unlike the ones previously mentioned, embraced inclusion and valuing diversity. The people who make themselves found make the difference. Those who ready themselves to receive a ball perhaps a little heavier, but which then gives more satisfaction. And so, I have to tell you, thanks to this ecosystem, and the path created earlier, water skiing, specifically, it's tiring to live with a difficulty, but it has perhaps given me awareness I wouldn't otherwise have had. Luck affects everyone, with or without disability. Those without disability don't experience wishing for different choices. There is often the idea that how it didn't go is better than how it went, and I think sport teaches us that. The challenge is ensuring progress aligns with our primary objective. I enjoy many things, and today's is a particularly rewarding example. Sharing my story, especially given the industry and unforeseen opportunities it creates. The challenge is to make the film beautiful, beyond all unmade films and untold stories. Whether they could have been better or worse than what we are experiencing. Can you summarize the importance of trust within? Trust is essential for collaboration and competitiveness within an organization. How important is it? How do you build that in 1 minute? Then I'll move on to questions from the audience. Absolutely. As you know, I trust you completely. I am employed on a permanent basis. Trust has had an enormous impact on my life. I am here thanks to Beatrice, and Alessia and Giovanni who escorted us to the stage. Thanks to you who accompanied me. Everything, even the simplest act, is trust, a value added not only for those who cannot see, but generally. We often focus on the fear of trusting, not what we miss by not trusting. And in companies, quite rightly, it is a central issue. It is a theme, however, that cannot be bought, and therefore we sometimes struggle, invest in this issue, because if I have to build a new plant, I make a project and build it. Invisible things are more difficult to see as investments. Trust is generated by human connection, not necessarily friendship, but feeling. We remain people beyond our roles. That's one aspect, so build unstructured spaces, do we? We experience it during team building activities or organizational training. It's about what I have to do, you do, relating as people. An interesting sentence reminding us of the compass of trust. Be empathetic with the person, aggressive with the problem, as aggression towards the person lacks trust. Building that context of empathy between people and aggression, or problem resolution, is a first step. To keep that trust alive. Feedback builds trust as a circular element in a relationship. It's not about me trusting you, and you trusting me. It's not two separate channels, but something between us, a task for both of us to cultivate. Nice phrase, empathetic with people, aggressive with problems. As you see, always inspiring. What can you tell us about authenticity? I sometimes remember we discussed this previously at the company. Dealing with a person with a disability. I say this for myself too. We've discussed being embarrassed about how to address someone who cannot see, or how to behave. Maybe he gets offended. What words should I use, and do we all put on a mask sometimes? What is authenticity for you? Regarding diversity, organizations with ANFAO are experiencing behavioral changes.
stanno vivendo perché c'è proprio i comportamenti, cioè è il comportamento che dice.
Children learn more from observed behavior than from what is said to them. This highlights the importance of culture.
Noi, che è più educativo delle parole, no? Quindi questo è bello e interessante come focus. Io credo che serva uno strato di cultura.
Words a layer of culture and behavior, so a knowledge. Knowledge nurtures curiosity, requiring the ability to build personal relationships because we are all different, even amongst ourselves. For example, my teammates. I've often seen it happen to me, even in companies. If a person is in a wheelchair, do not push their chair or push them. Friends at races tell me to push, yet we push each other. I'm distracted by my phone and calls while pushing, unlike others who resist being pushed, feeling like a cart. I prefer dialogue, relationships, and the ability to listen and ask questions. They help us understand how much another person will discuss themselves. I write, having authored 2 books, and work within the field. This gives me an ease in discussing my disability that others don't always have. This relationship calibrates behavior. Pasquale. This applies to disability in generally. How do I know where you want the ball if I don't ask? Or how do I know how my team knows where? I want the ball to be passed to me if I never share it, if I don't. Don't take things for granted. Communicate. Don't assume others know what you want. By the way, he mentioned the 2 books he wrote. You can find his association, Real Life, on social media. We support it when possible, as it helps blind children participate in activities Daniele does.
Perché aiuta i bambini non vedenti a fare tutte le attività che in parte fa anche Daniele.
Today, the visually impaired football team plays in Milan at Pala Isio, and the visually impaired football championship is starting with 5 teams. Thanks for mentioning it. Too blind to play with sighted people, too sighted to play with the blind, they would theoretically be a nobody's child. We invented this league that didn't exist to allow them to have a team. By the way, we are twinned with Inter, so now they have the, I support Roma, so I'm out of the game, but Inter is very sensitive to these issues and we are one of their teams. 15 blind children returning from camp in Trentino went skiing in the mountains. They didn't miss a single one, which is good news. Another 15 in mid-February will go to Roccaraso, then to Abruzzo, to cover the south. We have 16 cities in Italy where children are beginning to play sports. This is because the risk exists. Regarding inclusion, sport is for the Paralympic athlete with a disability who wants to compete at a high level. The Paralympics often features athletes who acquire disability during their lives. I, due to my experience, am convinced that sport does good no matter what level you reach. And so, as you say, we try to make these children do everything. Some get passionate, others experience it. Not easy, but playful. A cure-all for parents. Seeing your child capable of doing something is sometimes more powerful than 10 sessions at the psychologist. So this is what we try to do. Thank you for mentioning it. Visit us for sport. As I always say, you'll see good things, because if I hadn't nominated her, he would have, so I fooled him. 16 questions. 11 minutes. Read telegraphically as much as possible. The first question asked, thank you for asking, it makes the meeting more participative. Have people ever treated you differently because of your disability? Almost always, and generally positively. Sometimes, as a child, I skipped queues at clubs and museums. Yes, there is some diversity. In fact, it is also understandable, particularly at the beginning. I'll see you tomorrow, I said. I sent a lot. People at the psychologists, without even knowing it. And, after blindness, it becomes an element, not the C element. I have friends, relatives. If you take any step, you must tell me. If you want to give feedback, make a joke, or if friends show me pictures claiming I made a mistake, that's the magic. But yes, absolutely, people happen to treat me differently. It still happens, and it's also right to accept this thing, as long as then this thing in the time it sort of fades away. Daniele once asked me on the phone, while I was in the office, to describe the view from my window. I wondered why he'd never seen a blue sky. How do I describe the blue sky? He put me in that difficult condition to make me realize how to deal with him. Talking, he explained how comparing approaches is enriching. If the director crushes me, enter we see. Perfect. Besides water skiing, have you ever thought of doing other sports? You said that. Exactly, I on snow. Even here on my socials you find everything. I try many sports. Climbing, athletics, blind tennis and classic to extreme Pilates, and offer them to my children, though perhaps not at a high level. Sports, a lot of sports. Perfect, we always go on. Clowns enter perfect. Was there a moment in your life that made you consider leaving your passion? Yes, many moments, particularly when I was already a top athlete. Weekend athletes with disabilities were first unable to enter the federal center. No. Talking about inclusion is good, for better or for worse. There are times passion wanes, not because you lose it, but because the context doesn't support it. Often, children stop sports not due to dislike of sport, but because of a coach's inability, or parents' excessive expectations. The challenge is to find purity in relationship with passion, avoiding limiting context. How much can we really say we have accepted diversity? If you would take 40. No, very little, but there is definitely a bit more culture. A trivial example: public transport stop announcements. That already realizes if we were more, if they worked better, inclusiveness would be automatic. I live in a small town in the province of Varese. 2 of the 3 lifts at the station have been out of order for months. Say nobody has ever bothered to fix them. If the stairs were inaccessible, action would be taken immediately. Much remains to be done. Digital accessibility is a disaster for the blind. There are no fully accessible websites. 99% of public administration sites are totally or almost completely inaccessible. Here again, the digital barriers are more challenging because you can't see them. It is not enough to put the accessibility stamp on the site. Navigate it, and especially feel strongly those issues of non-architectural barriers, equally limiting for those who do and do not see. You can't see me, and I'm being indicated to finish my 5 minutes. Let's move on. How much do you think athletes with disabilities enjoy sport? And how much is demonstrating to go beyond the limits? And I think sport in general, even for those who see. For the able-bodied, for the severely able-bodied, let's say, there is always the challenge, there is always that challenge of going beyond limits. So I think it's quite common among sports people. They tell me it's for revenge, and many with disability pursue it that way. However, a 30-year skiing career fueled by revenge isn't sustainable.
Carriera di 30 anni dopo la rivalsa quasi sugli sci, il divertimento è anche la 30 anni sciare, perché quando per rivalsa non è magari in un letto sostenibile, di non poter fare più niente.
So after revenge there's passion, fun and gratitude.
Senza fare movimento.
Ottimo, andiamo avanti. Che consigli daresti a te te stesso se tornassi indietro nel tempo.
When you find yourself maybe in a hospital bed, you think you can't do any more.
E probabilmente di accogliere di più certe difficoltà. Dirlo adesso è facile, ma ricordo anche quando i miei amici hanno fatto la patente.
Nothing. You also appreciate entering a camp sportsman without movement.
Verso l'indipendenza,
Great,
l'adultità.
let's move on.
Poi quando ho iniziato a ritirarle le patenti dei miei amici, ho detto, pur senza fare movimento, no? Cioè anche, e quindi come sempre
Ottimo,
questo
andiamo
sforzo,
avanti.
questo allenamento a guardare il bello nelle cose.
What advice would you give yourself if you went back in time?
Certi passaggi li avrei vissuti con più
To laugh more, have more fun, and embrace difficulties.
Come tu ben sai, puoi guardare in retrospettiva fino a un certo punto perché le cose contano.
Now is easy, but I remember when my friends got their driving licenses when I was 18. I experienced it with great pain. My driving license was a huge step towards independence and adulthood. Then, when they started taking away my friends' licenses, I said, but you can see it's not all bad luck, can't you? There's also, and so as always, this is an effort, a training to look at the beauty in things. If I had started earlier, I would have experienced certain passages with more lightness and sustainability.
Mi sono sentito un figo, mi sono sentito
Things count when lived, not in retrospect. Effects aren't absolute. Let's move on.
tu fai di tutto perché le cose vadano al meglio, ma poi vincere deriva anche da altro, però mi sono sentito questo e anche poi pressione, perché dopo devi
Many questions have come in. We may not be able to answer them all as we hand over to the presenter, a former volleyball player in 3 minutes. He can confirm.
Gioia pazzesca. Andiamo avanti? Anch'io, comunque.
Competition passion. When did you win the first world championship, and how? How did you feel? And I felt cool. I felt good, strong and rewarded, even lucky. Even high-level athletes know success requires effort, but winning also depends on other factors. I felt pressure to confirm, then gratification.
ho degli amici che mi dicono quando siamo a Milano, ah guarda oggi è una bella giornata, si vede il Monte Rosa, no? Poi
It was an unbelievable feeling of crazy joy. Anyway, I think that's another question.
aspetta che metto gli occhiali, ma come ieri vedevi il Monte Rosa da Milano e oggi non riesci a vedere un fogliettino che quindi io non so voi cosa vedete.
Do blind and visually impaired people dream? Do they dream? Those who lose sight dream of seeing because they know what it means.
In vacanza con i miei amici, magari sogno le loro
I don't know what you see. As I said before, for me you are also a trevor. Sometimes I dream of blindness. No, it's fascinating. Friends in Milan tell me, look, today you can see Monte Rosa, can't you?
Questo c'è un po' l'idea, questo bias, adesso fa figo anche dire bias, quindi lo diciamo anche noi.
The next day, hand them a piece of paper. Can you read it to me? Perhaps not the medicine. I mean, wait until I put my glasses on. Yesterday you could see Monte Rosa from Milan. Today you can't see a leaflet, so I don't know what you see. And so, when I dream the life I live through my senses. If I dream of a holiday with friends, I might dream of their voices, sand, or the sea.
Tra le mani, la sensazione che ti dà in gola.
The aperitif music. So you dream through all those channels that are equally exciting. Often there is a bit of the idea.
Penso al rumore magari che fa
This bias. Now it's also cool to say bias, so we say it too. There's a bias that unseen things can't affect you the way seen things do. But it doesn't. But a curiosity. When you dream, what do you dream? Do you see images? No, because I don't have the image formation. I don't have it, so I have no idea, he says. My image is, if you think of a fizzy drink, imagine it cold. I'm thinking of the feeling of a cold, wet can in your hands. Throat. To put the can next to it. You haven't got the image exactly. Not the image you think of.
esatto, quello è stato uno switch dei miei genitori in primis.
Noise when opening it. These things, not clearly. The image.
Ti fa dimenticare invece
Last question. Then we come back, as I think you need to ask us some questions.
e poi bambino. Invece la mia fortuna è stata che i miei genitori
When did you start being blind from birth?
prima del cieco
First we go to the next one.
è stato molto utile. Poi non c'è stato una slide indoor, un momento piano piano
When did you accept that you were like this and wouldn't change?
certi pensieri, certi dialoghi
You've seen this, you told me once. In the beginning, you hoped for the medicine. Then you are turned to religion. At one point.
andare in quella direzione lì.
You said enough. I'm not going to see everything. A switch from my parents. First, because sometimes, chasing the cure makes you forget.
Non so se c'era una domanda o due per te.
Instead of pursuing childhood. I often say those who can't see are sometimes blind first, then a child. Instead, my luck was that my parents saw the child before the blind man, and that was very helpful to me. There was no sliding door. Over time, I realized certain behaviors, thoughts, internal dialogues, and words helped me welcome, accept, and sustain this dimension. Very good, then I would give him a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, Pasquale, and to everyone here. And then I don't know if there was a question or two for you. Is off. Listen to you for hours, Daniele. You are a great example. I too would have so many questions for you. We have a tight schedule,